Lorraine hadn't expected the creak in the floorboards to make her flinch anymore. After all, it had been 11 years since William passed, and the quiet of the house had become her only consistent companion. But that evening, when the sun had dipped low behind the birch trees outside her Vermont cottage, that faint sound pulled her mind back to a memory she thought was buried for good. Her fingers tightened around the porcelain teacup she held, steam curling up and softening the lines of her wrinkled face. She stood in the living room, where William's old armchair still remained untouched, and stared at the heavy oak door she had locked out of habit. She always locked it, even though no one ever came anymore. Lorraine was 72. She lived alone in the same home William had built when they were young and still imagined forever had no end. The house smelled of cedar and lavender, filled with memories pressed into every surface. She had once dreamed of filling it with grandchildren, laughter, and holidays that spilled into morning. Instead, she filled it with quiet routines and the delicate hope that one day, she might find meaning in the silence. She wasn't lonely, she told herself. Not exactly. But the silence sometimes made her forget her voice, forget the sound of her own footsteps. And then there were moments like tonight when something stirred. Presence. Not malevolent, not ghostly. Just a shadow of a life she once lived. Earlier that day, Lorraine had unpacked a box labeled "Studio." It had been sealed since William's death. Inside were tubes of dried oil paint, brushes stiff from time, and a sketchbook with her maiden name etched faintly in pencil. Lorraine Hayes. It was strange to see herself before she was Mrs. Lorraine Whitmore. Before wife, mother, widow. Before she forgot she once had dreams of art galleries and Paris in spring. She had nearly put the box back. But instead she opened the windows, let the July air sweep in, and set up an easel in the sunroom. Her hands trembled as she traced the outline of an old birch tree. The muscle memory was there, buried under years of grief and distraction. With each stroke, her breath deepened. She was painting again. And then came the noise. The floorboard. The sound that didn't fit. Lorraine moved cautiously. The room was unchanged. No breeze. No open windows. The door still shut. But that feeling remained. Like someone had walked in. Not William. She knew better than to believe in that kind of magic. It was something else. Something internal. She sat back down and resumed her painting. Her hands steadied. She painted the tree thicker this time. Rooted. Sturdy. She realized she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. That creak in the floor wasn't an intruder. It was her. Her return. Her reclaiming. The next morning, she woke earlier than usual. She brewed coffee instead of tea. She tied her silver-streaked hair in a low knot and put on jeans she hadn't worn in years. The ones with paint stains that William used to tease her about. Lorraine spent the day painting. She painted the birch trees, then the river behind her home, then her hands, then a self-portrait, eyes tired but alert. Her hands moved with more confidence. The house felt less heavy. On the third day, she called her daughter for the first time in weeks. "I've been painting again," she said. There was a pause. Then, "Mom, that's amazing. Do you have pictures?" Lorraine smiled. "Not yet. But I will." And she did. She took her old film camera and began photographing her paintings. The angles. The light. She remembered how William used to tell her that her photos felt like secrets waiting to be heard. She joined a local senior art circle, reluctantly at first. She walked into the community center with a canvas under one arm and nerves in the other. But they welcomed her. They were kind. A woman named Ruth complimented her use of shadow. Another named Yvonne invited her to lunch. Lorraine's world was widening. Slowly, like the thaw after a long Vermont winter. One evening, after returning from a gallery showing of local seniors, she stood in her kitchen staring at the locked door again. She walked to it, turned the latch, and left it slightly ajar. She wanted the breeze. She wanted the creak. She wanted to be reminded that life could still enter if she let it. Later that night, she lay in bed, listening to the wind stir the trees. No longer afraid of sounds in the dark, she welcomed them. She wasn't alone. She had herself again. The silence hadn't broken her. It had sheltered her until she was ready to rise.